So I realise I'm probably a little bit late to the party on this one, but I'm quite excited about it. This is the one that we got off eBay. It's a diesel heater. We're gonna get it out of the box, have a look at it, see how it works, see if it needs any mods, and try it out. So here it is out the box, pretty standard fare really. I went for the tall. You basically get these in sort of square or more oblong upright ones. I went for the taller, thinner one. I quite like the idea of having the air gap underneath, and also the space we're going to be using it in is going to be more conducive to this size. It seems like it's pretty decently made. It's got its own tank on board. You know, all these things are fairly sort of standard. And then you've got your box of bits, you've got some clips, some screws, a little muffler, there's your remote. A ridiculously tiny piece of vent, which has obviously been hammered. So yeah, probably going to need some more of that. Exhaust tube, exhaust. More mounting brackets. Pretty well produced user manual. Always a little bit concerning when they're just a little piece of paper folded up with nothing but diagrams. So let's put it together and see if it works. So I've just had a quick strip down of this thing. We've taken the chassis off. It's only a few screws. Some of the screws have been, let's say, excitedly tightened, and some of them have sort of stripped themselves. Yeah, it's fairly basic, but it's not too bad. For the minute, I've just stuck a couple of Jubilee clips on the end of the wire in there, so I can plug it into a battery. The only thing I've found so far, which is a little bit worrying, is that the main wiring loom, which goes from the battery through here to the pump, and also carries the wiring for the display as well. All runs through the chassis and sits on a fairly sort of hard edge. Bearing in mind this thing's going to be running and vibrating and up and down in temperature. I didn't want that wiring loom sat on that hard edge, so I've got a little piece of plastic hose there, split it down the middle, just run it through the hole, cable tie either side, and that's just going to stop it from chafing through and shorting out potentially. And then apart from that, the only other thing I've seen is that which is something that a few people have brought up, is that this hose sits under here. It's a bit flimsy and it's quite prone to kinking there, so I'm going to route that in a better way so that it won't chafe on the chassis here and it won't kink. So once I've done that, I'm going to put it back together and run it up. So what I've done here is wrapped that small pipe with some adhesive aluminium tape just to give it a bit of protection. It's going to support it and stop it flexing and kinking, also reflect any heat that might build up. And I've stuck another piece of little conduit there just to stop it fraying on the bottom of the chassis. Next thing I've done is I've just cut a couple of pieces of plastic out of a little container, and I'm going to aluminium tape them to the bottom of the fuel tank, just where it sits on there, and that will give it a little bit of rub room as well. Having to rummage through my little drawer of batteries as well, because and I've just thrown it on the floor, because the battery for the remote, in spite of saying that it is supplied, wasn't there. So another bit annoying thing. Yeah, whilst it's running as well, we're pulling 5.5 amps, which is fairly hefty. So here it is running. It's actually pretty quiet. Nowhere near as noisy as I thought it was going to be. Kicking out some fairly good heat. So whilst it was powering up, it was pulling 5 amps. down now to 0.4. Literally just turned it on, producing some pretty good heat. I'm just getting the thing hot now, letting it burn off. Bit annoyed about the remote. There's no batteries with it. It looks like it takes 2. Still got to sync that up yet. So yeah, quick recap then. My amazingly printed instruction manual isn't as good as I thought. It doesn't really tell you a great deal. It basically just tells you how to use the remote, but then doesn't tell you the important part, which is how to pair it. So pairing the remote, you need to turn it on using the power button here, and then push and hold the up button for a couple of seconds, and then it will go into a mode, which I think it said RTE, and then I just pushed off and then back on again, and once I've done that, the remote was paired. So now I can use it via the remote. The memory function here changes the heat output. It doesn't look as if you can change the heat output, just the fan speed using the remote, but at least it works. Yeah, as I said, the batteries weren't supplied with the remote. It said in the pamphlet that it uses 1, it actually uses 2, so fortunately I had a couple of batteries lying around. For the minute, I've just got it rigged up on a battery with some crocodile clips, and as I've said before, when it's powering up, it uses quite a lot of current, which you would expect. It's got the glow plug going, it's got the fan going. So powering up, you're pulling 5.5 amps. Quite a lot of current going out of it pretty quickly, but once it gets running, it's less than half an amp, which I think is pretty good. And as you can hear, it's pretty quiet. It's already blowing pretty warm air now. It's getting hotter and hotter. As I've said before, I've made a couple of repairs. Just tidied up a few things that I didn't like the look of. Obviously this is going to go in place later, so I'm going to run up the piping. You're going to need a lot more ducting, I would say, depending on where you place it, but they typically come with not very much ducting. But on the whole, quite a good little machine. I would definitely advise that you have a look inside. Make sure that the pipes, the ones that I've shown, are not going to rub or chafe. Just make a few things a bit more secure for your own safety. Apart from that, it seems like a good little machine. Kicks out a lot of heat.